everybody. Today we're going to talk about treating data with care. I've got Dylan with me. Hi. And I'm Jenny. My first question to Dylan is, we know that the quality of one's data is often what makes it important. So how can data quality be achieved?
Well, to start with, let's just remind ourselves that the better the quality of your data, the better the quality of the output of the analysis that you're going to do on that data. As you've said in the past, garbage in, garbage out. So data quality is really important. One of the ways to achieve data quality is to make sure that your data is clean. And what we tend to mean by that is that it's not corrupted, it doesn't have funny things in it, that you've gone through and you've made sure that all the records are accurate, all the records are complete, no missing fields and things like that. The second thing I'd say is make sure that your data is well described. And perhaps an acid test to use in this case is, I might understand the data that I'm looking at, but if I gave it to somebody else, would they understand what this data is saying? So describe it. Make sure that your descriptions are full, that they're good, that they're meaningful. So if you have a spreadsheet, give your column headings, make your column headings sort of valuable. Don't just use 1, 2, 3, or A, B, and C. What is that data trying to say? Give it some sort of description. And possibly the third thing is to organize it well. There's nothing worse than trying to go through someone else's data that is just a jumble, that hasn't been neatly categorized, that hasn't been neatly organized. And in all of these cases, data is only as good as you make it. And the quality of what the data can tell you is only as good as the quality of the data itself. So data that you can't find, data that you can't understand, data that doesn't mean anything to you or is incomplete, well, it's pretty worthless. You may as well not have the data because you're not going to be able to do anything valuable with it.
And essentially, it needs to be usable with others, by others.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Now, Dylan, how does data encryption work?
I'm not an expert, but very simply, generally encryption works on a key. And what we mean by a key is very often it's a string of numbers and letters, sometimes very long strings that can be hundreds of characters long. So you take a bit of data that you want to encrypt. The first step is that a random key is generated by a piece of software. What it then does is it takes every single byte of that data and transforms it, changes it in some way. And the way that it changes it is to take the data and to push it through a mathematical formula of some description. The more robust, the more strong the encryption, the bigger the mathematical formula will be. But that mathematical formula incorporates that random key. So that random key is generated and then it is used to transform the data. What comes out on the other end is then garbage because it's being transformed. Nobody can understand it. What you need to then understand it is to send the data backwards, kind of in reverse. But the only way that you're going to get the original data out is if you apply that transformation in reverse with the same key. So if you don't have the key, you can't unlock the data. And basically that's what encryption, that's how encryption works. Whether it's encryption that you apply to a file on your hard drive, whether it's encryption that applies to e-commerce sites and the traffic that's flowing between your computer and the server, it all basically works in the same sort of way. Random key, data gets transformed. To get the data back into a meaningful way, do that transformation in reverse and apply the same key in that process.
And I'm gathering from what you've just said that you could use it to keep your own data safe, but you could also use it to keep your data safe when you send it to someone else, and in reverse.
There's a protocol that is used, and on many websites you'll start to see the the first couple of letters are not HTTP. They're HTTPS. And that little S simply means that this is now over a secure link between you and the server computer. So somebody they call it sniffing, finds your data. They can still intercept your data. But what they're intercepting is the garbled message.
Yeah.
And they don't have the key to ungarble the message.
Thank you. What then is backup, and how do you do that?
Well, data backup is really making a copy of your information, your data, and storing it someplace safe. Now, for some people, that someplace safe might be under their bed, on a stack of DVDs.
Oh, sure.
It might be in a vault. It might be in a safe. Take this as an example. The secret formula for Coca-Cola is data that is stored in this very elaborate safe system in Atlanta, in America. So they've opted for some physical kind of level of safety. But that data backup basically is just making a copy of your data so that if something happens to the device on which you're working with the data, you can always put the data back because you've got a DVD copy or a hard drive copy or even a cloud copy.
Right. And how often should you do this?
Well, that in a sense depends on the individual, and it might even depend on the sensitivity of the data. Me personally, I probably back up my, say, tax data once a year. So I submit my tax return, and then I make a copy of that tax return so that if anything goes wrong and my computer dies and the tax man comes knocking, I've got a copy of all the documents. So I only need to do that once a year because that's what the information requires. Some of my work documents, well, that's backed up every day. My wife backs up our family photos, I think, once a month. So she knows that if tragedy strikes and the house burns down, she'll only lose a month's worth of photos. Still, it's going to be heart sore, but it's a lot better than losing all of the photos that we have. So to answer the question, it really depends on you as an individual and how much value you see in your data. The more valuable the data, the more regularly you should be backing it up.
And Dylan mentioned cloud storage in the course of that discussion about backup. So I want to ask him to tell us a little bit more about this form of storage.
Cloud storage is really, really useful. A lot of it is free, and that's great. You can go into the shop and you can buy an external hard drive, that's a USB hard drive that you can plug into your computer, and you can back up all your data to that, and that's great. And many people need to be doing that. You have to pay though for the hard drive, and that can be sort of anywhere between 1,000 and 2,000 rand. And then where do you put the hard drive? Please don't put it in the same case as your laptop, because if that case gets stolen, you've lost the laptop copy and the backup copy. Big mistake. And that's where the cloud is really useful. You can take your data, and over the internet, you can send it to a server or a server farm that is distributed around the world. As some people feel a little bit iffy about that, like, oh, maybe someone can get access to my data there. But if you send it to a reputable cloud, Google have reputable cloud services, Dropbox, Box, Microsoft have one. These companies build their reputation on the safety and security of your data. So it's not in their interests for your data to get out, because their whole business model will then be broken. But as I said, the other benefits to that is often it's free.
Yes.
You get a certain amount of storage, which is 50 gigabytes is probably more than for what most people need. And it's in many ways a lot more secure than any physical backup that you make, because you are still responsible for the security of that backup. If your house burns down and the disk is in your house, well, it's gone. If it gets stolen, well, it's gone. If you lose it, well, it's gone. With a cloud backup solution, all that you need to access your data again is a device, and an internet connection. And the backups that the Googles and the Dropboxes do on their servers, you know, us individuals, we can't compete. They have enormous infrastructures to make sure that data is secure.
This is probably a silly question, but nevertheless, can the cloud break?
In theory, I suppose the cloud can break, but it can probably break as often as the internet can break. And one of the reasons that the internet is so robust is because it's not centralized, it's decentralized. So I don't know whether people watching this remember the 9/11 attacks in the US on the World Trade Centers. But when those World Trade Centers collapsed, in those two buildings were some of the world's largest internet hubs that direct traffic around the internet. The undersea cable from Europe to America went through those hubs. Those hubs broke, but the internet didn't break because you were able to redirect traffic around them. And the cloud is similar, and that's kind of why we call it the cloud, because it's not this thing that you can touch. It's like a cloud, and it kind of just exists there.
Ubiquitous.
It's ubiquitous, yeah.
Vague in a way.
In a way. And so Google's cloud is not a single server.
No.
It's hundreds of thousands of servers, and there are probably multiple copies, maybe 100 copies of your data on those servers. So if one server breaks, or even one server farm breaks, your data is still safe because it's being copied on multiple other server farms. And the likelihood of all of those server farms breaking at once is practically zero.
Well, I'm certainly grateful that I can store a whole lot of my data in the cloud. We do it quite a lot here at Mindset. And so I'd say, as we close this short video, that you cat learners should pay attention and really look after your data as much as possible. Thank you.